There's a kind of silence that follows betrayal, not the loud kind, not the one that screams and lashes out. No, it's quieter than that. It's the kind of silence that settles in your chest like a stone after you realize someone didn't just take you for granted. They took your loyalty, your time, your belief in them, and treated it like it was disposable. They thought your consistency meant you had nowhere else to go. They thought your patience meant you lacked pride. They mistook your loyalty for dependence. But what they never understood was that loyalty is not given out of weakness. It's offered from strength. And when someone offers you that kind of strength and you spit on it, life takes note. Not immediately, not loudly, but inevitably, because life has a quiet way of returning everything we hand out. And for those who treated your loyalty lightly, the weight of their own decisions is coming back to them, one lesson at a time. This is not about vengeance. This is about truth. And truth doesn't need to shout, it just waits. And now it's their turn to learn. Loyalty is not weakness, it's voluntary strength. It's a strange thing how often people confuse loyalty with submission, as if standing by someone means you lack options, as if showing up again and again means you've been cornered, caged, or brainwashed. But real loyalty is never born from fear. It's not the product of desperation. It's a decision, a deeply personal one, to offer something stable in a world that constantly pulls people apart. Loyalty is an act of courage. It's holding the line when it would be so much easier to walk away. When storms rise, when people shift, when emotions flare, loyalty is the quiet voice that says, I'm still here. Not because I'm blind, not because I'm incapable, but because I chose to be. The ones who took your loyalty lightly never stopped to ask what it cost you to give it. They didn't see the nights you doubted yourself, the moments you questioned whether staying was wise. They never heard the internal negotiations, the silent battles you fought to preserve the relationship, the friendship, the commitment. And because they never saw it, they assumed it didn't exist. They thought loyalty was something people gave away for free, like a trinket handed out at a fair. But the truth is, loyalty is expensive, not in money, but in self. It requires patience. It requires swallowing pride. It means choosing peace when you're tempted by payback. And above all, it means carrying the burden of someone else's weight, sometimes without being asked, sometimes without being thanked. That's why betrayal cuts so deeply. Not because you lost someone, but because they lost you, and they didn't even notice it happening. They let go of something sacred because they never understood what they were holding. And here's the strange part. You never needed them to be perfect. You just needed them to recognize your commitment, to treat it with care, to handle it like something rare. But instead, they held it like it was replaceable. So now you've stepped back. Not out of hate, not out of spite, but because you finally understood that your loyalty should be honored, not harvested. And in your absence, they'll learn that what they mistook for weakness was actually one of the strongest things they ever had, and they let it slip through their fingers. People who take loyalty for granted often haven't earned it. There's a kind of arrogance that forms in people who receive loyalty they didn't work for. They start to believe it's natural, automatic, they think it's a given. And in that illusion, they stop asking why they have it, they stop questioning what they did to deserve it. And when a person stops asking those questions, entitlement sets in. They confuse your loyalty with their superiority. They think your presence is proof of their power. They assume that because you stayed, they must be doing something right. But what they never realize is this: you weren't loyal because they were exceptional. You were loyal because you were. It was your character that made you stay, not their actions. It was your integrity that held things together, not their effort. And when someone who hasn't built anything receives something valuable, they often don't recognize its worth. Just like someone born into wealth doesn't understand the value of a dollar, people who are handed loyalty without earning it don't know the weight it carries. They begin to treat it like a resource, something they can withdraw from, use up, and even weaponize. They forget, or maybe never even noticed, that you were the one holding things together when everything was fragile. You were the one giving patience when they gave carelessness. You were the one choosing to speak with kindness when they reacted with cruelty. But to them, it all looked effortless. Because real loyalty doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a scoreboard. It doesn't brag. It just keeps showing up silently, consistently. And silence is easy to ignore. So they tell themselves stories to justify their neglect. They'll always be there. They're just emotional. They care more than I do. I don't have to try. But behind every quiet, loyal person is a storm building. Because loyalty doesn't mean blindness. It doesn't mean you don't see the patterns. It doesn't mean you don't feel the disrespect. It just means you're giving the other person time. Time to change, time to grow, time to meet you halfway. But when that time is wasted, something shifts. The loyal heart doesn't explode, it closes. Not suddenly, but permanently. And that's when the lesson begins. Because now they don't just lose your support, they lose the version of themselves that only existed in your presence. The one who was believed in even when they didn't believe in themselves. The one who was defended even when they didn't deserve it. The one who was prioritized even when they were careless. And they start to feel it slowly, subtly. The silence grows heavier. The absence becomes louder than any words, and they begin to understand that what they took for granted was never guaranteed. Because loyalty is not an endless resource, it lives inside a person. And people get tired. People wake up. People learn that loving someone shouldn't mean losing themselves. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest shock of all is when they realize you were the rare one. That not everyone gives like you gave. That not everyone forgives like you forgave. That not everyone stays when it's hard. And when they look for someone like you again, someone who will stand by them through the chaos, through the mess, they'll see just how rare that kind of loyalty really was. They'll realize too late that they had gold in their hands, and they treated it like dust. Life has a way of balancing the scales. You don't have to correct every injustice. You don't have to chase every apology. And you don't have to fight to prove your worth to people who were too blind to see it when it mattered. Because there's something in this world far more consistent than revenge. And that's life itself. Life has a rhythm. It may not be immediate. It may not satisfy the part of you that wants resolution now, but it moves quietly, precisely, like water shaping rock, like seasons changing without permission. And in that slow movement, it teaches, not always gently, but always thoroughly. The ones who took your loyalty for granted will eventually find themselves in situations that mirror the very dynamic they created, only this time they're on the receiving end. The same neglect they offered, they'll feel the same dismissal they gave will return to them. Maybe not in the same form, but with the same sting. And it won't be because you made it happen. It will be because life doesn't let lessons go unpaid. See, you can't cheat the structure of reality for long. When you use people, when you drain the loyalty out of someone and leave them empty, you're not just damaging a relationship, you're corrupting your own character. And character always catches up. There's a moment that comes for everyone, a moment of reckoning. Maybe it hits them in the middle of the night when the silence feels too loud. Maybe it shows up when they need someone and no one shows up for them. Maybe it creeps in when they see you thriving, healing, distant, and realize you're no longer reachable. And in that moment, they understand something they couldn't grasp before. Loyalty is not about convenience, it's about sacrifice. And the person who gave it to them, you didn't do it because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to stay in a place they were too immature to value. Life doesn't need you to explain that. It will show them. It will show them in the emptiness they feel when no one defends them like you did. It will show them in the hollow friendships that never go as deep as yours did. It will show them in the mirror when they see themselves and realize they lost someone who stood by them, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And you don't have to harden your heart. You don't have to carry bitterness. That's not your burden anymore. Your job is to grow, to evolve, to protect your energy from those who never learned how to value it. And in doing so, you let life do what it's always done. Restore balance. It may take months, years, but the truth always rises. The weight of your absence will teach more than your presence ever could. Because some lessons aren't taught through arguments. They're taught through silence, through space, through watching someone become everything they thought you'd never be without them. And in that quiet unfolding, the scales begin to balance. The weight of regret is heavier than the burden of gratitude. Gratitude seems simple, a thank you, a small gesture, an acknowledgement, but for some even that is too much. Because gratitude requires humility. It requires the ability to recognize that someone else poured into you when they didn't have to. And for people who carry pride like armor, admitting that someone else helped them feels like weakness. So instead of appreciating your loyalty, they minimized it. Instead of thanking you, they used you. And instead of honoring your presence, they expected it. They thought they'll always be there. They thought they'll never leave. They assumed that your loyalty was just part of the background, like furniture that never moves, always reliable, always available, never demanding anything back. But what they didn't realize is this: every act of loyalty comes with a choice. You didn't have to answer that late night call. You didn't have to stay in their corner when everyone else walked away. You didn't have to carry their weight when they dropped their own responsibility. You chose to, again and again, and they ignored it, not because they didn't see it, but because recognizing it would mean facing the truth that they had something valuable and they didn't treat it with care. So now they're left with something else, something far heavier than the simple act of gratitude they refuse to give: regret. And regret doesn't ask for permission. It shows up in the quiet moments when the noise fades and there's no one left to distract them. It whispers during the nights they feel alone. It creeps in when they need help and realize you're not picking up anymore. It echoes when they hear your name and feel that tightening in their chest, the one that says, "I lost something I didn't understand." Regret carries weight because it can't be undone. You can't go back and say thank you after you've already burned the bridge. You can't choose respect once the opportunity has passed. You can't offer gratitude to a ghost. And the burden of knowing that you gave them chance after chance while they gave you silence, excuses, and disregard, that's not a burden you have to carry. It's theirs now. The irony is painful. if they had just shown a little gratitude, if they had just said, I see what you're doing and I appreciate you, things could have been different. But they were too proud, too distracted, too sure that you'd never leave. Your growth will be the most honest mirror they'll ever face. There is no louder message than transformation, no clearer truth than a person who was once overlooked, now out of reach, and no deeper consequence than having to watch someone you once had become everything you never believed they could be without you. That's what happens when a loyal soul heals. They don't just walk away, they evolve. They rebuild in silence, not to prove a point, but because they've finally remembered who they are without the weight of being taken for granted. And the very people who underestimated you, the ones who thought they had you figured out, the ones who thought your loyalty meant you were stuck, now have front row seats to your growth. But they're not part of it. They're not contributors. They're spectators. And that is the most honest mirror life can offer them. Because when someone grows beyond you, you're left alone with the version of yourself that never changed. And suddenly all the excuses fall apart, the justifications don't hold, the blame doesn't land, because there's no one left to carry the emotional labor, no one left to absorb the chaos, no one left to validate your ego while you ignore their heart. So now they watch, maybe from a distance, maybe through the people around them, maybe in the quiet moments of self-reflection they once ran from. And what they see isn't bitterness, it's not revenge, it's not malice, it's peace. That kind of peace only comes when you've made it through the fire and stopped needing the approval of the ones who fed the flames. It's the peace of knowing you didn't lose them. They lost someone who was willing to weather storms for them. And it hits differently because it forces them to ask questions they've never asked. Why did they stay for so long? Why did they leave so quietly? How did I not see their value when they were right in front of me? Those questions don't have easy answers because growth doesn't just expose the one who's healed. It exposes the one who refused to. And here's the twist they never saw coming. Your glow up wasn't loud. You didn't need to shout your success. You didn't need to post every milestone. You just became consistent, healthier, happier, more selective. And that version of you, the version that no longer explains, chases, or pleads, that's the mirror they'll keep facing. And it won't lie. Because that mirror doesn't reflect who you were when you were loyal to the wrong people. It reflects who you became after they showed you why they didn't deserve it. And that's something no apology can erase, no message can undo, no late night call can fix. So let them feel it. Let them sit with the realization that you were the turning point they didn't take seriously. And let your growth speak for itself. You never needed to hurt them. You never needed to expose them. You just needed to heal. And healing, real healing, is loud enough for the soul to hear, even in silence. Because while they learn the weight of regret, you carry something else, the quiet, unshakable power of becoming exactly who you were always meant to be.